Hi, everyone, and welcome to my presentation on implied consent. Ever clicked on I agree without reading a thing? Congrats, you just pulled a mini Faust. Welcome to implied consent, where your silence, your shrugs, your click can mean, sure, take my data. Why not? It's like selling your soul to the devil. Except of eternal damnation, you just get more targeted ads. So buckle up. We're diving into the fine print you didn't read. Implied consent sounds harmless, but online it often means silence is treated as a yes. Actions like browsing, clicking, or just staying on a site are taken as an agreement even without clear permission. Dense privacy notices turn this into a default gateway for surveillance and data collection, so people keep using the service without really understanding the terms. This normalizes implied consent, even though many scholars argue it falls short of meaningful, informed digital privacy. This review examines implied consent and online privacy through the lenses of law, behavior, and ethics, asking what really counts as meaningful agreement in digital spaces. It draws on foundational and recent work tracing the history of consent models, user behavior, corporate data practices, and the power dynamics that shape policy to show how current systems fall short. Using a problem-driven thematic approach, it points towards alternatives that go beyond superficial notice and choice to provide a more substantive protection for users. In the late 1990s, the FTC helped cement the notice and choice model, where the companies post a policy and users are treated as agreeing by continuing to use the service. The 1974 Privacy Act set a different standard for government data, requiring explicit consent for many kinds of sharing. Over time, debates shifted from blaming individuals for not reading the policies to demanding stronger institutional duties to protect data, highlighting a persistent tension between robust public sector protections and more flexible, business-friendly commercial practices. Burkhardt and colleagues argue that digital consent should rest on an informed attitude where people have both autonomy and psychological readiness to make real choices about their data. Valid consent goes beyond glimpsing in a privacy policy. It requires understanding what is at stake, weighing trade-offs, and actively endorsing data use. Because notices are long, dense, and discouraging to read, the usual notice and choice model rarely meets this bar, leaving deep information asymmetries that make consent far less meaningful. Many Americans misunderstand how companies use their data and feel they have little real control. Consent often becomes a legal fiction, as people click agree simply to access essential services. Overwhelming privacy policies cause a cognitive overload and push users to rely on brand trust, which lowers perceived risk while quietly enabling data exploitation, especially when opting out is difficult or hidden. Today's data collection does not stop at a single click. It extends into tracking, profiling, and algorithmic decisions that follow people across platforms. Legal protection lag behind surveillance capitalism and behavioral ads, so consent screens can look protective while leaving users with little real power. When organizations manage consent in an opaque or manipulative ways, it fuels public cynicism and disengagement from both digital services and civic life. In today's data economy, companies understand complex data systems, while users only encounter polished interfaces and dense notices. Saying no often comes with a social or economic cost, reinforcing existing power imbalances. Legal contracts and dark pattern design further constrain meaningful choices about data. This moment calls for ongoing, relationship-based consent practices rather than one-time checkboxes that pretend to settle everything with a single click. Meaningful consent requires structural and psychological preconditions, drawing on scholars like Burkhardt, Bashir, Fuqua, and Turow. Real consent depends on informed understanding, genuine options, and institutions designed around user welfare, not merely policy acknowledgments or checkboxes. The literature supports moving toward simplified, user-centered, and transparent consent protocols, alongside stronger regulation and potential alternatives to the consent paradigm, to uphold autonomy, democracy, and human dignity. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video on implied consent. I appreciate your engagement, and I encourage you to share your reflections or questions in the comments below. I am Edmundo Osorio, graduate student at the State University of New York, signing off. Hasta luego!